My guest today is part of a team that is focused on creating tablets and devices that are trying to provide computers and all the tools and things that we want, the technology that we want, but without the danger of blue light and sort of, as they say, de-inventing the tablet, de-inventing the computer. So to tell us more about that, we're going to talk to Tristan Scott, who is head of marketing at Daylight. How's it going, brother?
Hey, Derrick. Thanks for having me. Going well.
Thanks for being here with me, man. I told you before via email that I first found Daylight. I think it was at a conference in Texas, maybe last year. Saw some of you guys, promoting the tablet and offering, just showing what it offers, and I was really surprised and also excited about it, because I do think that, when we're dealing with the health side of tech, it's something that is often overlooked. There's a lot of people doing great work, but we're staring at these devices all day long, and we're doing damage to our eyes and everything we're going to get into. So it was really exciting to learn that this is even out there. But before you tell my audience all about it, could you share a bit about maybe your background and sort of what brought you to working with Daylight and why this is important to you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't even know you did a documentary on 5G. I'll have to watch that. That's really cool. I think there's so much kind of misinformation out there on these topics, and it's hard to cut through such a dense piece of it, right? Because it is a bit complex. But yeah, my background is actually in electrical engineering. So that's what I went to school for. And I was right before I graduated college, I suffered one too many concussions and basically went down a self-healing journey to where I had to take my health into my own control, didn't get help from the centralized medical system, doctors, and really went from being an engineering student, college athlete, to not being able to function on a daily basis. So, and that was for over a year and a half, really bad post-concussive symptoms. So I began learning, reading, consuming all this more esoteric, decentralized health information, biohacking, and got really interested in this space because I started implementing practices that got me better and eventually got me back to my baseline before that brain injury and then past it ever since. And doing so, realized that we were trading convenience for quality of life over and over again. And there's really a lot of intersections between the centralized government, corporations that were running society, and overall quality of life for the individual member of society. So I began, getting on social media, interested in talking about these things. I actually was more into the food system, health side of things at first, regenerative agriculture, into Bitcoin. I wrote a book in 2021 called Bitcoin and Beef, which was a lot of fun and kind of my first way of talking about these topics I was passionate about online. And then I realized, I was blocking blue light, I was grounding, I was cognizant of EMFs pretty much since 2018. But I realized as I got on social media, there was a huge gap in terms of the knowledge set required to talk about these topics in a digestible manner because they are quite complex. So I realized in my electrical engineering background that I could fill a gap. I could really carve out a niche for myself, and I really went deep into the rabbit hole learning about the history of EMFs, technology impacting our biology, the whole electromagnetic side of our being, and started talking about that online. I started my own podcast, which was called Decentralized Radio in 2023. And that ultimately got me connected. A doctor connected me with my now founder, CEO of Daily Computer named Anjan. And it was quite interesting because I was really on this trend myself on a personal journey where I was dialing in my lifestyle, my environment to the highest degree. I was feeling so much better. I was spending more time in nature, but then ultimately I was plateauing in my progress because I was spending more time online. Building a social media brand, talking about these topics inherently makes you stare at a screen, use technology far more. And I started regressing in terms of how I felt every day. And I always knew that technology was the last piece because you can't buy a grass-fed iPhone. You can't really just get a healthier version of the things we used the majority of our waking day. And then I realized that there were these engineering tweaks that were possible. You could improve the light spectrum. You could improve EMFs at the core hardware level, but it would just take a full-on company mission and momentum to do that in order to be successful, because I worked in the electronics industry, so I know how hard it was in terms of scale to actually produce consumer hardware products. And then I got connected with Unjin, and his mission at Daylight was underway, and it was just kind of a perfect match, bringing it to market, and really now injecting my knowledge set on the electromagnetic aspects of our biology side of things. And it's really exciting because we have the ability to make healthier technology. It's not really a theoretical challenge. It's more so an execution challenge. And now that we've gotten off the ground, really the world is our oyster in terms of where we can go. And it starts with the light, it starts with getting outside, but even like improving the EMFs coming off a device, and how we interact with technology on a daily basis can be completely changed. And it should be completely changed, because to me, it's the number one environmental toxin that we have today. And we spend ever increasing amounts of time using technology, and the biggest companies in the world are the ones making them, and their entire business model and incentive structure is to get us on device, on screen as long as possible. And now that's the same business model being applied to our children. So to me, this is society problem number one, and we're in a great position to help push this in a better direction. And that to me is why it's so exciting to wake up every day and push really hard on this. And the momentum there from the macro piece in terms of everyone being aware of this problem is at a perfect point as well. So, yeah.
That is a beautiful story, brother. I love it, man. And I think it's, you said a lot of important things there. For one that I can really relate to and connect to is doing the important work that we believe in, but then as a result of that, spending more time on these devices, which we know are, causing harm and can do damage, and trying to find the balance between that. And that's something that I've struggled with, because as my work has grown over the last decade plus, I've been doing independent journalism and public speaking and going to events that involves recording interviews like this. It involves writing articles and spending a lot of time staring at these screens. And I try to balance it, with time in nature and going to the gym and just getting physical exercise and movement and all these great things. But either way, even with the sort of, there's more awareness now where you can kind of have like the night light on some of your devices, but overall, there's still, I think, part of the ecosystem that we want to get away from. And that's what really excited me to see what you guys are doing at Daylight. I'll go ahead and put the website up here for everybody to see, and we'll be talking more about these devices throughout the show here. We're talking with Tristan from Daylight Computer here. Tell us now, what would you say is the main, the main driving point? Obviously, it's the lack of blue light here, but I know that you guys also put a focus on, trying to reduce the distractions, right? And the sort of the shrinking of attention spans that is happening with humanity because of the way the other devices operate. Could you tell us just more about the basics of what makes Daylight different from the average Microsoft computer, Apple computer, et cetera?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's actually better to start in terms of understanding why our current devices are so bad for us, or so detracting, or so distracting and disruptive. And the analogy I always give is it's really environmental design. So if you walk into a Las Vegas casino, what is the environment that you have now just walked into? You have walked into a room, a building that has no natural light. It's completely cut off from the outside. There's no clocks. There's free alcohol. There's girls walking around with not that many clothes on. And then there's all these bright flashing lights everywhere, like the highest density, the highest intensity of bright flashing lights. And then there's the games, there's the slot machine, and people think that it's just the games, right? They're always talking about the algorithm, how good it is, how addicting it is, which is definitely true. That's the software game component of this. But there's also the full environmental design. So when you sit down at the slot machine, it's really, really hard for you to get back up, because all of your dopamine, all of your stimulation is coming from this thing that's right 6 to 12 inches in front of you, and there's a reward mechanism built into it. And that is the analogy, right? Our modern devices are the same way. They have bright, flashing lights, very high in blue light proportionally, which is the most dopaminergic, stimulating form of light. And even during the day, when we're meant to consume bright light, bright blue light from the sun, people always use that example. Well, it's from the sun, it can't be that bad, but we're getting it from a sole object as opposed to the entire environment. So that's really the difference. And then the light is flickering, which is really straining on our eyes and our brain. It keeps us indoors, which our indoor environments are far more toxic and really not what we are designed to use, because the air is worse, the EMFs are higher, the light environment is distorted. We're not connected to the earth physically from a grounding perspective. So we've been completely removed from the environment that we're meant to live in, and we wonder why we're sick all the time. And then we're staring at this stimulation box all day long. And of course, it's going to disrupt our entire cognitive reward system, our sleep, and all of this communication, fulfillment, and stimulation is coming from this rectangle that is really hard for us to perceive in this physical reality that we typically are living in. So how do we solve that? And of course, I mentioned the EMFs piece as well. That's another stressor to our biology. So, and on top of that, right, is the algorithm, which inherently gets better, more addicting, more customized, more personal. It's so good that, you get an ad immediately for something you want. And that's consumerism. And that's the business model of the, society we live in, completely attention-based economy. We no longer have sovereignty over our own attention and cognition, which is, to me, the ultimate robbing of freedom. And people like to go full-blown conspiracy theory about mind control and all these things. And I'm like, well, we're voluntarily subscribing to mind control every day by looking at our screens. And our premise at Daylight is that it doesn't have to be that way. We can have technology. We can have actual innovative technology, such as the internet, such as social media, such as devices, such as AI, without the distractions, or way less of the distractions, because there's a lot of good, right? Like, how much have you learned from being on the internet? How much has everyone listening to this learned from being on the internet, being on social media? We wouldn't be able to do this podcast. We wouldn't be able to start a movement for our own freedoms and rights without these kind of forums and channels of digital communication. And even, the access to information and learning now with artificial intelligence, you can consume and learn things that would have taken months now in a matter of hours. So there's a lot of good that comes of it, but inherently we have the world's knowledge at our fingertips. And what do we end up doing? We end up scrolling reels, TikTok, getting distracted, having 50 tabs open, and being sold to and buying products constantly. So that's really the dilemma. So at Daylight, how do we cut through the detractions? How do we eliminate the detractions so that you can just get the good that comes from technology? And the way we do that first is we change the interface. So the screen itself is how you're interacting with these devices. So how do we change that interface to be less stimulating, less distracting, and more warm, more neutral, more synergistic? So most devices they're emissive. That means they emit light, and the light they emit is very disproportional to what we should be consuming. They're very high in blue light, which is the most stimulating and dopaminergic and disruptive to our circadian rhythms during the nighttime. And they're completely absent of more healing, longer wavelengths like red and infrared. And then that light, as mentioned, is also flickering, which is another stressor. And then inherently, we can't use them outside in the real world, like I like to say, because they're emissive and the brightness can't compete with the sun. You can't see it. It overheats really easily. So our screen is reflective at its core. So you can see it in the sun actually even better. It uses the sun as its backlight when you go outside. So now you've changed the game. You can do work. You can be outside, which is, to me, the number one benefit. And then at nighttime in low light conditions, we have a custom backlight that's amber in tone. So it's more like a candle. It's more like a campfire. It's warm. It's not overstimulating. And that supports your circadian rhythm. That supports your health. It's not as damaging to the eyes. And that is custom. It's amber in tone, and it's 100% blue light and flicker free. So when you're winding down at night, you're actually winding down. You're not re-stimulating your nervous system and your brain with blue light, with the flicker, so that it's really hard for you to get back to sleep. And there is certainly a sleep epidemic in terms of the quality of sleep that we get these days, because hours are one thing, but the actual melatonin, the actual cellular repair that we go through, which is imperative because that's when we clean up the day's damage, and the day's damage is getting, higher and higher every year. And that's because we look at blue lit screens at night. That's because our lighting environment in general is very, very bright at night and very dull during the day in comparison to the sun and our natural environments. And then there's also the EMF stressors on top of that. So that's the hardware. We've made it paper-like. So imagine a Kindle that can now do everything an iPad can do in the kind of Android Google ecosystem. And that's the benefit, is that you now have a paper-like tablet computer that can do anything you need to get done online. It's amazing for note-taking and writing because it's paper-like. It's amazing for reading, but you can pop on a keyboard. You can do emails. It's like a digital typewriter. And it's really fun because it's just the beginning of, wow, these devices could actually return to being tools instead of really the source of all our fulfillment and stimulation. And it's a fine line.
I love it, man.
Yeah, it's a fine line to walk, because what I'm saying is this long pitch. It's inherently designed to be more boring so that your life can be actually more exciting and better. It's like we took the color out of the screen so that you can have it in your life. That's the whole point, which is hard for people to transition to sometimes. But after a while, they'll look at it and be like, wow, like my eyes don't hurt. This feels like calm. Like your nervous system can relax. I think everyone in the modern world has such activated, cooked, as the kids say these days, nervous system. And you're never going to be healthy or really be optimal when you're constantly in fight or flight. So that's what we're trying to help solve.
I love it, man. It's great pitch there. And I think everybody here listening will fully understand and probably be excited about these kind of solutions. I just want to share from my own personal experience. I mean, just when I visit some of my family, I've been trying to get them to be more aware of blue light, not only from the phones, but they have, like many Americans in the modern world, adopted the LED, the halogens, like these bright lights that are just ridiculously bright. And it's after dark, it's 9-10 o'clock at night, and they want to go in the kitchen or whatever, and they turn these lights on, and I'm just like, shirk away from it, because we've got all of our lights to be dim at our home. So when I go there, it's already like a little overwhelming. And then I see them, including my young nieces and nephews, staring at their phones till 10, 11 at night, and just trying to get them to understand and to think about these things, which for the most part, when you're younger, you're not thinking about it. You don't even, you're not cognizant of it. But I got my niece to at least think about that. Like, hey, babe, when you're laying there in bed and you're staring at your phone all night, do you ever have trouble going to sleep? Do you get headaches? And she said she does get headaches. And I said, well, it's probably because you're falling asleep staring at the screen with Bluetooth in your ear, and just the whole thing, right? And so this is such an important solution. And I definitely noticed, I have a habit of trying to get offline about 2 hours before bed. And on the nights I succeed with that, and I am completely away from screens and, just adjusting to the nighttime and, reading or doing something else to get my brain to settle down, I absolutely do sleep much better. And then on the nights when I'm just overly stimulated or productive to the point of going to bed, I definitely don't get that great of sleep. And, and it's so important. I think, again, most of my audience will be familiar with the importance of rest and sleep and your body being able to heal and repair, especially if you're doing strenuous things like going to the gym or just working, physical jobs or whatever. You need that even more. I wanted to ask a question before we go further into the tablet about the blue light specifically, because you mentioned in your introduction kind of your research into that area. I'd met a gentleman last year who was also in this line of research, and he was saying, in his opinion or his view, that that blue light has this very specific, like you said, it stimulates dopamine, and it has this very specific response in humans. And his, I guess, theory was that it had been chosen for a reason. Without getting into more of a conspiratorial line of thinking, his view was that like the companies that make these devices full well know that there are better lights that could be used, like amber, like you guys have chose, or other colors that could be used that would be less stimulating to dopamine and stimulating the mind. Do you have any thoughts on that? Like, how did you guys come to amber, for example? Like, did y'all look through the different color spectrum and sort of see the impacts of what lights do what to our brains?
Yeah, it's a great point. And I kind of alluded to it a little bit, saying like we're voluntarily opting into mind control, right? Because to me, it doesn't matter how this like started. You can go look up the history of like the guy who invented the blue LED. It's actually the same company, I believe, that so many people source LEDs from now, including ourselves. And was that nefarious? Maybe. I mean, Las Vegas Casino has roots as well. Like, these people know what works. And it's not a secret that blue light is the most stimulating, most dopaminergic form of light. Like, everybody kind of knows that. So at this point, yes, 100%, they are fully aware that the light spectrum they use is the most stimulating, the most prone to addiction, the most dopaminergic. So is that nefarious? Sure. I mean, they are not really hiding it. The whole entire, like, Zuckerberg, all these people, they want us on screens as long as possible. That's the business model, right? So could they pick something that's warmer, that is less stimulating? 100%. But there's a reason why even the Apple night mode is not even getting rid of all the blue light. It's getting rid of like 50% of it, because they want the full-blown experience to be as best as possible. They're optimizing for color, consistency, for stimulation. The newest iPhone's like 3,000 nits max brightness. And if you never heard that term, it's just absurd how bright it is compared to like the environment that we're supposed to be consuming from a light perspective. And to just go back, like what is the light that we are meant to be consuming? And all you need to do is follow the solar spectrum. So the best way to communicate this is bright days and dark nights, dim nights. You want as much light, brightness, and brightness from the sunlight is full spectrum. It does have tons of blue, but it also has tons of red and infrared, so it balances each other out. So we're not getting enough brightness during the day, and then at nighttime we have way too much light. So the cyclicality is completely gone. And what light did we have at nighttime? Typically, it was fire. It was campfires. It was candles. It was, fat oil lamps. And now, and then it was incandescent bulbs, which is basically fire in a glass bottle, because the tungsten filament in an incandescent is lit on fire by AC electricity. And now those are debatably banned or prohibited for sale for general purpose lighting, because they're energy inefficient, even though the energy that's inefficient is infrared, which is really important for our health. So that's where we're at. And when we look at it, you get in the biohacking space and everyone's like, red LEDs, red blue light blocking glasses. We just need no blue light. But in general, red is actually not ever present in nature. It's like the coals, the embers of a fire at the very, very end of it. And that's about it. And the problem with red light is that it's really hard to see it. Our eyes are not photosensitive to red light. And if you look at a campfire or a candle, it's actually a much more full spectrum solution, and incandescent as well. It has like tiny, tiny amounts of blue, more green, more yellow, lots of orange, more red, tons of infrared. And that's the sort of spectrum we're going for. And yes, we're 100% blue light free, but we actually have a full spectrum amber light that has a little bit of green, more yellow, tons of orange, amber, and then some red. And we want to get infrared. We want to get more red and infrared into the spectrum and be able to slide the temperature so you can change it as the night goes on. And the reason why that's important is because it's both a combination of light intensity and brightness and the color spectrum that disrupts melatonin production and sleep quality. So if you have a red lit screen, like my MacBook is at nighttime, because that's the only way to get rid of all the blue light, you have to increase the brightness in order to be able to see it. And if your house is full of red LEDs or you're wearing these dark red blue light blockers, I mean, it's straight up like dangerous. You can't even see anything. So we Love the amber color because it's more like a fire. It's more full spectrum. And then you can turn the brightness way, way, way down at night, which is key. So that's V1 of our light. And we're excited to kind of keep pushing that in a direction, because ideally you have these sliders, you have something that adjusts based on the time of day. So imagine all our ambient light and our devices shifted with the sun. And then after sunset, each hour that goes by, it gets warmer and warmer and warmer. That's really the cyclicality of the light that we need.
And just on that point real quick, I mean, like you said, you mentioned Apple Nightlight, and I know that Microsoft and other devices have started to have that option where you can, set it for like, okay, sun rises at 6 a.m. and this is how the light changes. What are your thoughts on those? I mean, are they still only reducing 50% or less of the blue light, or is it still worth pursuing that? What do you think about those?
Yeah, they work in reducing the blue light. Like I said, it's never fully. It's usually like 50, maybe 60%. And it's great. I mean, what I would do is like have night mode on all the time. And then basically at nighttime, you have to do your own manual shortcut to get rid of all of the blue light. So the accessibility shortcut in the iPhone, where you can set up a triple click, go into color filters. That's the only way to get rid of all of the blue light. And I think it's really important, especially on your phone, because you want to make your phone as unattractive as possible. I mean, you could put it into grayscale mode, which doesn't actually get rid of blue light. It just color mixes, but it still looks less attractive. When it's fully orange or red, it's less attractive. Even having maybe an older phone. I have an iPhone 11 because it's the last phone that doesn't have flicker, pulse modulation flicker, and I get crazy headaches when I look at newer phones. And it sucks. The phone is not good, but I don't really want to use it that much. So it's kind of a dumb way to think about it, but inherently, how do we make our products less attractive? Because right now they're just lighting up our brain on every level. And that is known, and that's the tactics that they use to sell more products.
Yeah.
And
so you're trying to disincentivize yourself from being pulled into it and distracted by it. Yeah. Well, let's talk about that for a moment. I'll pull the website back up. You mentioned a little bit about creating the distraction-free environment. Tell us more about that. Like, how does that work? What is different from this tablet that's going to help maybe somebody who is, like, for example, my partner? This is a really relevant conversation, because a couple of days ago she said, I deleted Pinterest, I deleted Instagram off my phone because I've been scrolling too much and struggling to stay focused. So somebody like her, what is this going to offer different?
Yeah, so there's two components of it. There's the hardware, the physical interface, which is mostly what we've been talking about. And imagine you have a Twitter feed or X feed that it's very sensationalist. It's really drawing you in, but it's grayscale. There's no color. It's more like a digital newspaper. Well, you're a lot less likely inherently from just a light stimulation perspective to stay on that as long as you possibly can. So that's one aspect. It inherently just looks less attractive because there's no bright colors. And even Instagram, even TikTok, the videos are less stimulating because they don't have the colors to really suck you in. But you can still doom scroll.
And when you say that, are you saying that because our brains are just naturally attracted to the color?
Yeah, 100%. And the other aspect is we are actually building our own software, our own operating system. And it's in its early stages today, but you think of how problematic most of our online interactions are, right? In terms of the notifications, in terms of like context switching. I have like 20 tabs open right now, and it's inherently not great for me. And I don't really know what to do about it, because the way they've set up the UI and the UX, it doesn't make it easy to not be distracted. And that's obviously done on purpose, because they don't want you to be super productive. They want you to, be doing something and then open another tab, and then all of a sudden there's an ad in the sidebar, or you're in social media now and you are consuming things as opposed to creating things. That's really how these workflows are set up. So there are new tools, there's new apps, there's ways to get around this, but it's high friction. You have to set up your own custom workflows and be super deliberate. You can have the screen timers, you can delete those apps. I personally cannot have Instagram short form content apps on my phone anymore, because you also have that form factor. The phone is so much easier to scroll than your desktop. But guess what sucks on desktop? Instagram. You can't even do half of the functionality on the desktop version versus the mobile version. Well, obviously they've done that on purpose, because they don't want people to go on Instagram.com on their MacBook. They want them to go on it on their phone, because they're going to be scrolling and on there for way longer. So what we can do at Daylight, because we're controlling the entire stack, the hardware, the display, the software, we can create an ecosystem centered around all these principles of distraction-free productivity. So we're in the early days, but for example, notifications will be off by default. When you're in a surface area on the internet, there will not be tabs shown, like 40 tabs. It'll be easy for you to really stay in your workflow. And we have a lot more coming, but I'll give you an insight as to one. What do you do when you don't know something or you want to look something up? Well, you could be reading, you could be writing a document, you could be journaling, and it could be a nice workflow, but all of a sudden you want to look something up. Now you're on Google, now you're on ChatGPT, now you're opened your world up to be pulled in from some other angle. And now you're on social media, now you're on email, and you've taken yourself out of that workflow. So what we are doing, and we're launching this in the next month, is we have an AI assistant, or kind of like an overlay that we're building, that is the same source of information as normal, like language model tools. But imagine you're reading a book, and instead of having to go to Google or ChatGPT, there's a sidebar that just opens up on top of your book, and you say, hey, who is the president in 1795? And then it just gives you the answer right there. You never have to leave that surface, and you never get distracted. That's the benefit of building your own operating system on top of a hardware device. And that's just the early stages. App curation, screen time management, all these things can be like natively integrated for your own benefit. So it's stuff that anybody could do, but the problem is these companies that make our products that we use every day have no incentive to do so. So our business model is completely different than theirs.
I love that, man. So you answered one of my questions, because I was going to ask about the operating system, and it's great to hear you guys are working on your own. What is the current operating system that is on the tablets?
Yeah, when I say working on our own, it's it's a bit complex to explain, but basically we're building on top of Android open source protocol, so we can have the functionality of a normal product. So you can download anything from the App Store, the Google Play Store. You can get any app in there. And over time, it will just become more and more custom until we build our own ecosystem, have our own app stores. We don't have to be beholden to Google and all these certifications and things. So it's kind of like a starting point. And over time, it just gets more and more custom. But yeah, that's we have an Android-based operating system that's going to be more and more custom over time.
Very cool. And another question that came to mind as I was reading on the website, it looked like there's a quote from your founder, from the CEO, that says the company is sort of set up differently than other corporations. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we're technically classified as a public benefit corporation. Now, this is typically done in a non-authentic fashion. Like, people would just do this as, how like nonprofits, charities, there's greenwashing, there's ethics washing, all that stuff, right? But we wanted to say, like, hey, we are actually gonna hold ourselves accountable to what we are saying our mission statement is. And that's really creating a more synergistic, human beneficial technological ecosystem that is a net benefit for society. That's the mission statement. And now legally, technically, from a corporation bylaws, we are holding ourselves accountable to that. Now, that's on our own accord, and there's no like legal ramifications if we, become a nefarious company all of a sudden. But it really is important to us, because so many companies start with this vision and human beneficial mission, but it gets compromised along the way. And it's typically when they get investors, they go public, they really lose control of their kind of trajectory and their mission that they work so hard to build. So something we are extremely deliberate about is who we are taking as investors. What is the plan in the future? We never want to be compromising our mission, because that's when you lose control. And people often are like, well, can't Apple just buy you out, or they will buy you out? And that's not going to happen, because they're just going to, kill it. They're going to, have it as a niche product, but really focus on their core business model of getting people in the tech world for 24 hours a day at some point. I mean, it's like, how do we hold ourselves accountable, but then also be very strategic? So that was one of the most important aspects of why we register as a public benefit corporation.
Yeah, I appreciate the explanation there. And of course, the acknowledgement that, like you said, some companies use this as just a BS way to try to score points and say, look at us. But, it's cool to see somebody's actually taking that serious and wants to embody that. So thank you for that. As we wrap up here, I wanted to just take a note here for anybody who's going to be seeing this. You guys do have an ongoing sale right now, Amber Sunday. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about this and how this, why people might want to take advantage of this.
Yeah, so we are a small hardware startup. We pretty much do one deal sale a year, and we did this last year, even in the midst of being sold out. So this is our second annual sale, and what we did here was just curate kind of a nice bundle, a keyboard, a wooden stand. And actually a fun thing that I've done is, because I mentioned incandescent bulbs and how they are technically prohibited for general purpose sale. And a lot of people, especially in certain states like California, physically cannot get access to incandescent bulbs. And I do think they're the best form of lighting, especially at nighttime when you get a low wattage warm one. So I've taken it upon myself to acquire a limited batch that are very nice and warm. And we're going to have that as part of the bundle, just one bulb, but we're going to do a limited edition drop of the incandescents with our logo oil painted on it later this week. So it's just kind of a fun way to say, like, we can make things better. We just need to go and do it. And that goes with technology, that goes with our lighting, that goes with, Wi-Fi routers. Like, there's so much we want to do and can do and will do. And we're just kind of getting started. So
that's awesome, man. Very cool. I see the incandescent bulb, and this is one of the reasons I'm grateful to live in Mexico, where they haven't been banned everywhere, and you can still find them pretty easily. So when we moved into our current house, we redid all the lights with incandescents. I just want to make a note. It does say the incandescent for North American orders only. So does that mean that you guys do ship internationally? Because we have an audience here that will be from all over the world.
Yeah, we ship internationally. The Daylight ships to Canada. It ships to all of Europe, even parts of Asia as well. So Australia, New Zealand, Japan, Southeast Asia. Just the incandescent bulbs, since they're 120 volt, are North America only. But yeah, we have a lot of customers in Europe, which is exciting that we're international already.
Very cool. Everybody, the website is daylightcomputer.com, daylightcomputer.com. The link to everything, of course, will be in the show notes. I really appreciate you taking this time and to share more about your personal journey and to let me learn more about the company. As I mentioned, I ran into you guys. I honestly feel like it was probably you that I talked to. Now that I'm seeing you again, I'm like, I think it was you that I spoke to at the Bitcoin conference in Austin or something like that. But one of you guys I got to learn about, I was like, this is really cool. Glad to see this project's developing. I know a lot of people who will be interested in this. So I hope everybody at home will at least check them out, see what they're doing, what they're up to. Stay tuned for more updates. And if you can't get it during their current sale, then maybe in the future you'll be able to, because I always want to highlight people like Tristan, like yourself, who are doing this important work, because I do a lot of work as a journalist focusing on the problems in the world. As I mentioned, a documentary about 5G and EMFs and some of the concerns. But what's most exciting to me is talking to people who are actually working on solutions. That's what gets me excited. And I know that my audience very much is looking for solutions, not just constantly wanting to be told why everything is wrong in the world. And when there's somebody like yourself and the team at Daylight working on the solutions, I want to give you guys a boost and see if we can support that. Any other closing thoughts before we say goodbye?
Well, I appreciate that, Derrick. Yeah, it's, people like yourself that are the only reason why we can exist, and everyone is aware of these problems. So thanks for your work. And the only other piece is we also have like a kids version, because, you mentioned nieces, and I think the kids is actually the largest tragedy that they're growing up on iPads now. Same hardware product, same premise, just slightly different software with parental controls and, blocking a lot of mature content and ads. So that's just at kids.daylightcomputer.com. And that's a new product launch that we had, and very focused on getting into schools and education. So that's kind of one of my main focuses for 2026. So if anyone has connections into schools, teachers, superintendents, or community, we'd love to talk to you. So don't hesitate to reach out to me, Tristan at daylightcomputer.com. And yeah, let's try and get the iPads and Chromebooks out of our kids' hands.
I love that. That is really cool. Thank you for mentioning that. I'm definitely going to look more into that. All right, everybody, check out the show notes for more details on Daylight Computer. Get you one if you can get it right now. Do what you can to protect yourself from being exposed to these things. Protect your attention span. Protect the youth who are, as Tristan said, most at risk from these things. And until next time, as always, remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free. Peace.
Since 2012, the Conscious Resistance Network has been an independent media organization focused on empowering individuals through education, philosophy, health, and community organizing. We work to create a world where corporate and state power do not rule over the lives of free human beings. Our motto is leading by example and helping others in their pursuit of freedom. Visit theconsciousresistance.com to find our articles, documentaries, interviews, podcasts, books, and more. Remember, you are powerful, you are beautiful, and you are free.